Hello, Mark Raymond here. Welcome to video 2 of Making the Work Flow. If you haven't watched the first video, I'd encourage you to do so. If you have watched it, a quick recap. The big idea here is that whenever we're doing work, we are making and managing promises. We're always doing work for someone else. They have expectations of us, we have expectations of them. So it's important to be clear about that. And the other part of this is that these promises, if you like, they happen in 4 phases when we're doing work. One is we're exploring what needs to be done, top left quadrant. Top right quadrant is we're getting an agreement about who's going to be doing what, by when, and so on. Quadrant 3 is delivery, where the work happens, where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. Quadrant 4 is the assessment phase. So we're going to be, this video today is we're going to be going into a bit more detail, exploring, no pun intended, quadrants 1, explore, and also quadrant 2, the agreement type conversation. So I'd encourage you to look at this a bit like a detective, looking for options to improve how you're working with others. And even if you get one idea here to improve things, I think that could be really worthwhile. So a couple of things I would just add here, in addition to the reasons I outlined in the first video. If you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, there's too much on, you're getting a bit slammed, and you want to manage your workflow a bit better and also prevent yourself from burning out, this can be really useful. And also if you worry about the work quality and perhaps unintentionally you micromanage your team, you might not be aware that's happening, this can be also useful. In addition to what I covered in video 1, what I'd say here is when we're going through these cycle of these conversations, there's always moods and emotions showing up. So we really want to be tuned into those of not just our own, but also other people, because they shape the conversations probably more than anything. So we need to be clued in there. And the other thing is there's always a trust dynamic at play. So we want to be mindful of that as well. So let's jump in. Quadrant 1, the explore phase. I want to first distinguish between non-routine and routine work. For routine work that we know and our team knows that we do all the time, often we're just better off skipping this phase and just jumping into making the request to the agree phase of the conversation. For non-routine work that we haven't done before, that might be new, that might involve other teams and so on, it can be really useful to slow down here, to speed up. And often I see people just wanting to jump in and get to action, who might have some people have a real strong action bias, or we can feel a bit panicked and hurried to come to a solution. So I just encourage you to be slowing down in phase 1, to be exploring the problem or concern. You might have a take on the problem, but others might have a different perspective. So it can be really important to get that into the room. And also to explore solutions with subject matter experts. Sometimes, or often, the solution you may not have expertise in. So I want to get the right people into the room. That does a couple of things. People are more likely to be motivated and to want to do a great job when they're involved early, and they can help shape what needs to be done. And the second thing is we just get better solutions. Nothing worse than spinning our wheels on work that's not going to make a difference. It's not going to solve the problem. So slow down to speed up. And the mood that we bring here is important too, because often we want to be encouraging some different thinking. So the moods that create different possibilities here can be important, where we want to trust people, where we want to bring curiosity, where we want to bring the desire to explore possibilities. So there's some things that are important there. Let's look at quadrant 2, the agree phase. So there are 2 skills here, or you can think of them as tools to have in your kit bag, you can bring into your conversations that often make a big difference to the quality of work. The first step is making effective requests. That's a skill, making effective requests. People don't often see it that way, but it is. And when we can make more mindful requests, we get better outcomes. The second part of this is responding to requests. Responding to requests in different ways is a skill. Let's go to the making effective requests. So what does an effective request have in it? We're clear about what we want, the standards of what we want done. We communicate why the work matters. The context, it's really important, often overlooked, but really important for the requester to be sharing that of the performer so they know the reasons why it matters and can also come up with other ideas. And again, much more likely to be motivated. They're clear about why them. We want to communicate while we're asking the particular person. We're asking, perhaps they've got skills, perhaps we trust them for a particular piece of work. I want to be telling them why, because they know why then, and again, more likely to be motivated. Timing, not just deadlines, but also how much time we think that the performer needs to be spending is important. The how, where the requester specifies how they want the work done. Again, we need to be careful here because we can get into micromanaging territory, especially for competent people. So we don't want to be doing that really in those situations. But for people who are learning on the job, who are building skills, potentially offering, particularly if it's a leader staff member dynamic, talking through the how can be really, really useful. The last part of this is the emotional tone. We want to be direct and clear, because if we're not, as in the requester's not, it just means that the onus goes on to the performer to be guessing the needs, which can produce a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. So I want to be clear, but also we can do that in a friendly tone and an approachable tone. So we're maintaining the relationship and we're keeping the line, we're signaling, we're keeping the lines of communication open. So there are some important things there. So I just invite you to think about your requests and whether or not you have those in them. And if not, maybe you might want to be thinking about doing that. The responding to the request bit. Often people just jump in and say yes, particularly, and they agree. And particularly in organisations or firms that prioritise client service and wanting to be responsive and client focused, sometimes you have to do that. There's no other way of doing that, and you need to be just agreeing quickly, and that's what has to happen. But not always. There are often times when that's a bad idea, or other situations where you may not need to do that. It's about reading the room, reading the cues, the emotions, the moods of the people that we're working with here. And there's also often politics or power dynamics at play. But other options can be really important. If we know we can't do the work, we know we're jammed, there's no way we can do it, sometimes we need to say no. Or if we're the wrong person to be doing the work, sometimes no is the best response early that takes care of the requester so they can involve other people. The last thing we want to be doing is making a commitment to a piece of work we know that we're not equipped to do. So early, better. If we feel like we're disappoint early rather than later. So that is an option. The other option is a maybe. We're not really sure if we can do the work by a certain time. So we want to go maybe, but check and confirm and come back to the requester and tell them, say by the next day or some other time. And that can just buy us a bit of time to go and talk to our team to make sure we've got resources to do it, and we can make a confident commitment once we're clear on some of those things. And the requester can feel that too. Sometimes it's appropriate to be making counter offers, especially if we weren't involved in the explore phase and we've got a better idea. So that's about listening to what the requester is asking, what might be behind their request, and being really tuned in there and making another suggestion. If you thought about doing this, I think that could be a better option, and so on. Another form of counter offer is where we know we can't do the work by the time, but can maybe do part of it. So we're negotiating here a commitment, and it's often good to be getting on the front foot there. So yes, if we know we can do it or we feel we have to do it. No, when we're the wrong person. Counter offer where we think there's a better way or we want to negotiate the timing, and a maybe and confirm when we want to buy ourselves a bit of time. So there's some things to be thinking about. So just invite you to be thinking about, what are your responses? Are there options there that you're not using that you could be using that would impact, where you'd feel a bit more empowered and where you feel like you might have a bit more agency? A couple of other points I want to make before closing out here. Sometimes we have things we need from other people but don't make the requests. So for example, if someone asks us to do a particular piece of work, we might need some things from them to do the work, including if they're a client, but may be too scared to ask. We don't want to be seen as incompetent or needy or so on, but often we want to be making requests of others early and getting their support, because there's no point being a hero. If we can get better outcomes involving other people, it's just better, and people are happy to be asked usually. That also applies if you're doing work that your team should be doing. So sometimes you can be thinking, oh, I don't want to overload the team. Maybe we care too much about the team and we do the work and we just bear the brunt, but we can burn out. So we really want to be thinking about that. And the other part too is sometimes we, in the course of our work, issues will arise, concerns will arise, and that can cause us to really stew on them. We might not be getting enough support from our boss, for example. So sometimes it can be important to be turning these issues or sore points into requests. So rather than stewing on something, maybe saying to our boss or leader, hey, next time we're in a meeting with the client, I'd really appreciate it if you kind of backed me in terms of the ideas that I had. Because that'll help, that'll help the client have more confidence in us, and so on and so forth. That's just an example there. So hope you find this useful. Hope you got some ideas where you could improve the quality of your conversations to coordinate work. And until the next video, may your work flow a bit more easier than it has done